there, welcome. So glad to have you here with me today. We are going to be making a really beautiful, colorful, protein-packed, omega-3 rich, one of my favorite recipes ever, salad with a salmon on top. So we're gonna make a green goddess salad. And this green goddess dressing is my favorite dressing because it comes from a time I spent at a restaurant in San Francisco when I was working there in the kitchen. And we made this incredibly flavor-packed, delicious, but also very healthy green goddess dressing that was made with pumpkin seed milk. All right, so instead of having cream and butter and all those different things, you just have pumpkin seeds, which makes it incredibly creamy and luscious and delicious to coat perfectly over all your vegetables and your lettuce and whatnot. So we are going to be using that pumpkin seed milk that we will make, and we are going to blend it with all of the herbs that you typically have in a green goddess dressing to have it full of flavor and extremely good for you. And then we're also going to use that dressing to coat our salmon and then sear the salmon with that green goddess dressing marinade. Again, it's a flavor-packed flavor punch, all right? So I'm really excited to make that part. We're also going to add some pickled radishes, and if you wanted to, you could do onions instead or also. And the key here is just making the right amounts of salt and sugar and vinegar so that it becomes a pickle, and you just let it sit for about 30 minutes and it'll become a beautiful, delicious pickle full of probiotics and a lot of good nutrients for you. So we're getting the protein, as going back to protein, we're getting the protein in the pumpkin seeds, in the salmon, as well as in some snap peas. So we will be using some snap peas in our salad, so you get a whole nother level of protein. So this recipe, although it's a salad, can definitely be a dinner, okay? It can definitely be a meal or a lunch, whatever you're looking for. It's going to take a little bit more work than your typical salad, but it will be well worth it. I also forgot to mention feta cheese. So if you're not vegan and you want to add some feta on top, you'll have a whole nother level of salty, delicious creaminess to it, and that also has a lot of protein. So all of these ingredients are very Mediterranean friendly. The feta cheese, a very wholesome sheep cheese, high in protein, low in lactose. And we're getting olive oil and seeds and herbs and salmon and vegetables. So it's very, very Mediterranean style recipe, and great for your body. It should make you feel really good. So let's dive in and make this delicious salad. So to start off, we are going to be boiling some water. So I want you to boil at least a cup of water, although sometimes when you boil water, some of it evaporates. So I would recommend boiling in a teapot or in a pot 1.5 to 2 cups of water, but we actually only need 1 cup of water. So I have my water boiled, it's pre-boiled here. And I also have some pumpkin seeds, which I keep a jar of these all the time in my kitchen because I love to use them in salads, in dressings, on my cereal in the morning, in my smoothies. They create a really nice consistency that's very creamy and milk-like, so it's great to have. They're really good for your gut. They're gonna help you digest your food a lot easier. So I am going to be measuring in. Just gonna pull these pumpkin seeds out here and grab my measuring cup, and we are going to measure in 1/2 cup of pumpkin seeds into this bowl. Now, if you wanted to make more dressing and save it for another time, double this recipe. It's going to be amazing no matter what you use, and it saves really well in the refrigerator for a week or so. So you could definitely have this over and over, a high protein, high quality salad dressing. And now I'm going to be adding 3/4 of a cup of my hot water right on top of these pumpkin seeds. So measuring this in just a little bit more than the volume of the pumpkin seeds. So 3/4, I'm doing 1.5 of these half cups I have here. Great. And so now those pumpkin seeds are resting in that hot, almost boiling water or boiling water, and we're gonna just let them sit for about 10 minutes and they're going to soften, and then we will blend all of the water and the pumpkin seeds together with all of the other ingredients for the salad dressing. So I'm going to set this aside, get it out of the way, Perfect. And now we're going to jump into pickling our radishes. So this is also going to take some time for this to pickle and create the fermentation process and the probiotics that we're looking for, as well as just the really great flavor, okay? So I have a little jar, but you could just do this in something that closes ideally, but you don't want plastic. Make sure you have glass. So if you have to, you can just do it in an open bowl and just cover it up with some foil or something, just to make sure it's nice and preserved. And then I have these beautiful radishes, and you can do this with 1 radish, 2, 3. Okay, as long as you have enough liquid to cover the radishes, then they will pickle. And then I love to use a microplane, especially for a recipe like this. It makes it really easy to slice these radishes. So if you have one, I recommend you use it. Otherwise, feel free to use your sharpest knife and just make nice thin slices of the radish. So I'm just going through, slicing them. I have it set pretty thin here. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit of a crunch when I bite into them, but for the most part, they're pretty thin. And then let's see, I'm gonna make 3 radishes today because that's how many I have, and I don't want to waste any, and I might as well pickle them so that I can use them in all of my upcoming salads. So here we go on the 3rd. And there we are. Now I'm just going to toss any of the tops or the bottoms that wouldn't be quite as tasty to bite into. Okay, so just getting rid of these. And then we're going to take these radishes, break them up a little bit, pull them all apart. They tend to stick together, and throw them in this jar, and they're beautiful. Now if you have access to a watermelon radish, go for that. That would also be really pretty. Okay, you'd get that texture in the middle, which is nice. But the color is actually going to change once we add the chemicals, essentially the salt, the vinegar, the sugar. So it's going to turn this a little bit pink. So it will alter the color and make it a little prettier. We like pink, okay? So now that I have these radishes in this jar, I'm going to grab my vinegar. And I have apple cider vinegar. You could also just use plain white distilled vinegar, although apple cider is particularly good for you. And it also has a wonderful flavor. So I really like to use apple cider vinegar when I'm pickling vegetables. And I am going to measure in 1/4 cup of vinegar. Again, I just want to make sure it's almost covering these radishes, but there's going to be more liquid here that we're adding in. All right. So I'm also going to actually add in a little bit more of the hot water. So when I said you're going to boil a little bit extra, it's because we're also going to use some in this. And what's going to happen is this water is going to kickstart the fermenting process and make it go a little bit faster. Because if you were to do this without the hot water, it would take more than 30 minutes for it to all work together and start to pickle, all right? So we're gonna kickstart it by adding in 1/4 cup of water. Okay, so we have equal parts vinegar and water. And now my radishes are almost completely covered with this liquid. So that's what I'm looking for. And then next step, we are going to be adding some maple syrup. This is going to help balance the flavor, going to make it a little bit sweeter because this is quite sour with all of that vinegar right now and radish, okay? So I am going to be adding in, let's see, just 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. So I'm just going to do the teeniest bit in this cup here, this 1/2 cup measurement. All right, perfect. 3 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup. So I looked at this and I thought, well, gee, I'm just going to make about 1/6 of this cup because this is a 1/2 cup. That might have been too much math for you. Ignore it if you'd like, but that's a good rule of thumb, okay? So 3 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup. It's always great to have in your back pocket. Next up, we're going to be adding salt. I always recommend a good, fine, high-quality sea salt. It's one of the best salts you can get. It has the most nutrients and minerals in it that your body needs, and it is highly delicious. And sea salt comes from the sea, Mediterranean, so pairs very well. All right, so we are going to be adding in here 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Now I'm going to grab my measuring spoon for this one. And I'm going to measure in that 3/4 of a teaspoon. I got a little too much there, perfect. And I'll let that in. And the salt is extremely important in this fermentation process. So it's very important that you get at least that 3/4 of a teaspoon in there. Next up, we are going to be just adding a little bit of flavor, okay? So you get to decide here if you want to add any of this or none of it. But what I like to add sometimes to my pickled radishes or other vegetables is perhaps a little bit of heat. So I'm going to add in just a pinch of some red chili flakes. And that's just going to kick it up a notch, give it a little bit of a warmth. It'll be really nice. I also like to add a little bit of black peppercorns, and actually in this instance, I have a few different colors. I have green, pink, and black. So I'm just going to put a few of those in there, the whole peppercorns, all right? And that's gonna add flavor. And next up, you could add coriander seeds, fennel seeds. Let's see, what do I have here? I'm going to add some caraway. Caraway is also a really fun flavor, and this gives it a little bit more of something that you would put in like a Reuben, okay? So a cabbage, that sort of thing. It gives it that flavor because caraway is in rye bread, and it pairs really well with those flavors. So that's kind of a fun addition, but I just love the flavor of it in this, and I think it also goes really well with salmon, all right? So just like that, I'm going to close it all up and mix it up, shake it around. There we go. Make sure it's all nice and coated in all of those flavors. And now I'm just going to let it sit for 30 minutes and let it pickle. And we'll use it at the very end to top our salad and have something beautiful and tangy and delicious on top. All right, so I'm going to put this away and then we'll go to the next step. Next up, we're going to be making the salad dressing. So now that you've let your pumpkin seeds and that warm water sit and the pumpkin seeds have softened and become smooth and creamy-like, so as we blend them, they'll become nice and creamy, we're going to be pouring them into a food processor or a blender. So hopefully you have one of the two. That's really important for this recipe. If you have time, let these pumpkin seeds sit for up to 30 minutes. They're going to just get softer and more tender. And if you want to do them the night before and let them sit overnight, don't use hot water. Just use regular water. Let them sit overnight, and they'll be the creamiest they can possibly get if you let them sit for longer in room temp water. All right, so I'm going to pour in all of the seeds and all of the hot water into my food processor. And truthfully, I love this in a blender just as much as a food processor. Both should work really well. And next up, we're going to be adding in all these herbs. So you can add a lot of different herbs from your garden. You can have a lot of fun with this. You could add basil or sage, but I recommend for the classic Mediterranean style green goddess dressing, we're going to be using parsley, dill, and tarragon. Chives are also great. So I'm going to be cutting off about 1/4 of my bunch of parsley, which I think is a little bit more than 3 tablespoons, but well, actually less than that. We want only about 2 tablespoons, but I really like parsley. I like a lot of greens, so I'm gonna go a little bigger here. And I just want to pull off some and throw it in. But all you really need is about 2 tablespoons worth if you were to chop it up and put it in 2 tablespoons, okay? You don't need a whole lot. Same with dill, okay? We're gonna grab 2 tablespoons of dill, throw it in there. I don't think I got quite 2 tablespoons, so I'm gonna add more in. And then I have these tarragon leaves, and I'm just gonna grab a couple of stems and throw the leaves in there, and that should be good. The more herbs you have, the more flavor you have. Sometimes it can be a little too grainy if you have a lot of herbs, but otherwise, it's just more flavor, all right? So don't be afraid of adding herbs in. And yes, parsley does have flavor, even though a lot of people don't think it does, because most people think of it as a garnish, but parsley is amazing for you, and it has lots of flavor. All right, so now I have these herbs in here. I have my pumpkin seeds and water. Next, we're going to be adding some vinegar and some lemon. Now, these are both acidity, they're both acids, and they're both going to help brighten up our salad dressing. They're extremely important in a salad dressing, but they're different flavors. So I love to have both lemon and vinegar. If you didn't have one of them and you wanted to make this dressing, you can use just vinegar or just lemon. You just want to use more of it. But I think the combo is beautiful in this recipe. So with my vinegar, let's see here, I am going to be adding 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and I'm going to use my 1/4 cup measurement here. 1, 2. All right, so there we go. And you know what? I just realized I gave you the wrong information earlier. 4 tablespoons is in a 1/4 cup. Okay, 4 tablespoons, not 3. So switch that in your mind. 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. 4 tablespoons equals a 1/4 cup. All right, so don't forget that. All right, now I'm going to take this lemon, roll it around, slice it in half, and I'm going to squeeze the whole lemon in there because I know that I want a nice bright acidity because it's a salad dressing, and salad dressings, you want them to have a decent amount of acidity so that they can really be bright and cheerful and easy to eat. All right, so there we go. Juice of 1/2 and 1 whole. If you're not sure and for some reason you're hesitating adding that much lemon juice, start with half. Add the other half if you think it needs it after you've blended it up and you've tasted it. All right. So now we have the lemon. Okay, we have the lemon juice in here. We have the vinegar. Let's see, what are we going to add next? We're going to be adding some sweetener. And maple syrup is going to go really well with the pickled radishes that also have the maple syrup. So I'm going to be pouring in some maple syrup, and we're going to be adding 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. There we go. All right, so pouring that in, and that's going to help balance out all this acidity that we put in here. It's going to smooth it out, make it a lot tastier. All right, anytime you're cooking and you have an acid, you probably need something slightly sweet just to balance it out. So even if it's just a little dash, just like in a margarita, all right? If you're familiar with making margaritas, you have a lot of lime juice, you have that tequila, but then you need to add just a little bit of agave just to balance it out, all right? So that's what we're doing here. So with that, we are going to be adding, let's see here, just a little bit more flavor. So we're going to be adding a shallot, all right? I have a nice big shallot here. You want to cut it just like an onion, so cut the top off, cut it in half, all right? I like to cut it in half just down the middle. And then we're going to be cutting off the root, and the food processor is going to do the rest of the work. So we can pull off the edges, all right? Pull off all that skin, and then just throw this right into our food processor, okay? So then, once we have those shallots here, that shallot, and actually you only want to use 1/2 shallot, all right? So 1/2 shallot should be plenty. I just pulled half of it out. I think 1 full shallot would probably be a little intense. Again, you can always add more. And if you're not a big onion fan, the acidity in this recipe should help to tame that onion flavor. It should help to make it a little softer on your tongue and your digestive system just by sitting in the acidity and salt that we're going to be using for this dressing. All right, next up, I know we have this shallot, but we're also going to add a little bit of onion powder. This is optional, but I love the layers of onion, the dried onion, the fresh onion. It's totally different in flavor. So I'm going to be adding just a little bit of onion powder, about 1/2 of a teaspoon. All right, 1/2 of a teaspoon. Pouring that in. And then we are also going to be adding some fresh garlic. All right, so I have beautiful garlic cloves here. I have 2 cloves. I'm going to slice off the root, the part that was connected to the root, slide that aside. Then I'm going to put my knife sideways, smash them to get them to let go of the skin, pull them off, And then I'm going to toss them into my food processor, just like so. Perfect. And 2 garlic cloves is a lot. It's quite strong, okay? But again, they're gonna be calmed by the acidity and salt in this dish. But if you're not a huge garlic fan, I would back off and just do 1 clove to start. See if you want more. All right, and then finally we wanna add some olive oil. So to finish it all off, smooth it out, cause it to emulsify, and really make it as delicious and salad dressing like as possible, we are going to be adding olive oil. So let's add in 1/2 cup of olive oil. We want a good amount of olive oil just to balance it all out, and add a fat. Fat is full of flavor. It's going to be essential to this recipe, and fat is almost always essential to everything you're cooking. All right, and there we go. I'm gonna take this, blend it up, make it as creamy as I can, so it's going to take a few minutes, and then I will be back to show you the results. All right, so it's blended. It blended for a good 3 minutes, so I know it's very smooth. And we're going to check it out now. We're going to check it out now, all right? And I'm going to grab a spoon. And looking inside, it's creamy and it's smooth, and it's actually a little chunky. I could have probably let my pumpkin seeds sit a little bit longer in the water, and I could also blend it a little bit more. So I have an idea of what I'm looking for, but it's for the most part really smooth, really beautiful, a little bit runny so that it can easily coat all of the salad, but that fat in there is going to help make it coat the salad, and it's beautiful. I'm going to call it good with this. I think it looks good. Looks like where I want it. But like I said, if you wanted it to be even smoother, you could run it even longer, let it sit a little longer. And now I'm going to keep it in this jar so that if I don't use it all on my salad, I can use it another day. And I have it all packaged up and ready to go. All right, so there we go. And I'll just put this to the side until I'm ready to make the salad, and I'll be using it on the salmon shortly. Next up, salmon, all right? This is going to be fun. So we have a lot of this already prepped. Now we're gonna get this salmon going so that we can cook it, have it ready to go on top of the salad, and finish everything off. So I'm going to pull my salmon out, all right? Right here, it looks beautiful. And I actually want to take the skin off because I don't really want to serve this salmon on top of the salad with the skin. In some dishes, it's nice to serve the skin on the salmon if you can get it really crispy and serve it really beautifully. But since we're going to be putting it in a creamy marinade, we're not going to be able to get that skin crispy. So I'm going to grab my sharpest knife. All right, this beautiful knife I have here. And I'm going to take this salmon and let's skin the salmon. So turning it upside down on my cutting board, and I'm just going to come from the side and wiggle my knife in under the skin. If you already have skinned salmon, great. That's going to make your life a lot easier. This is never super easy to do, and that's why sushi costs so much, because it's so labor intensive, all right? So I'm just going to wiggle my knife back and forth, and I'm carefully holding my hand right on top so that I can guide the knife just under the skin and not waste any of the salmon, but I can get all of that skin off. So the sharper your knife is, the easier this is to wiggle underneath and get it all off, and try not to waste any of the meat. And as you get further along, it gets easier to hold and to make it more precise. So there we go. I'm just finishing here, sliding back and forth right along the edge. Boom, diggity dog. I got the teeniest bit of flesh here, but it's super thin. It's not a lot. And my salmon piece looks nice. This is all some brown fat, okay, which is fine. That's gonna be flavored. That'll be tasty. So I don't mind leaving that on. I'm just gonna toss this skin. All right, and also toss the paper that the salmon came in. composting those. So now that I have this salmon ready to go, I just want to get some marinade on it and then put it into a pan. So I'm going to grab a plate to put the salmon on and add the marinade. Sliding this salmon right onto the plate, grabbing my marinade, and I have a little bit of salmon on my fingers, so I'm going to be careful not to touch my marinade right here, but I will use this spoon and then I'll just wash it right after. And I'm just going to take this marinade and slide it all on top of the salmon. All right, and then flip it and coat the other side with the same marinade. And this is full of all sorts of delicious flavors, all that salt, and it's going to taste really good on the salmon. Now, if you have time, I would let this sit for 10 to 15 minutes and soak up some of those flavors, okay? But if you want to get it going right now, it'll still be delicious just as is. So I'm going to grab my cast iron pan. If you don't have a cast iron pan, just use a thick bottomed pan if you have one. An all-clad or a copper pan are really great. Or if you don't have one, then just use whatever saute pan you have. But a thick bottomed pan makes the cooking a lot more even, and it can really give a nice sear onto the salmon, which makes it taste that much better. So I'm going to turn on this heat to medium-high heat, and we're gonna let the pan preheat for about 30 to 60 seconds until, if I grab some water under the sink and then I throw some water onto the pan, it's gonna sizzle, just a little sizzle. And that's when I know I'm ready to put the salmon onto the pan with a little bit of olive oil in between. Okay, so hot pan, cold oil, okay? You always wanna remember that. Hot pan, cold oil. We wanna get the pan nice and warm, not to a smoking temperature, but to a warm temperature, and then add a little bit of cold oil and the salmon, and this should help give it a nice sear. It should help prevent it from sticking, and it'll also make sure that it doesn't fry and that the juices and the nutrients aren't killed because a hot oil seeps into the food, okay? So I'm gonna rinse my fingers and grab some water and check the pan in just a second here. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, that's sizzling. That's great. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a little bit of olive oil, okay? A very Mediterranean fat that we're gonna be using in most of our dishes. Drizzle just a little bit, just a tablespoon or so. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long way. Then I'm just gonna take this salmon, slide it right on top of that oil. Pour a little bit extra of that marinade on top, because why not? It's more flavor, so get it all on there, all right? Put this in the dishwasher, and we're gonna let this sit for 5 to 7 minutes until the salmon is about halfway cooked through. Then we'll flip it, and we'll cook it about 4 to 5 more minutes on the other side, just until it's almost cooked through or just barely perfectly cooked through, all right? So let's let that sit, medium-high heat. If it starts to seem like it's really hot, then turn it down to medium heat. You want to keep an eye on it. You don't want it popping or burning. You want it a nice, easy sizzle. All right, so I will probably end up turning down the heat just a little bit as it gets hotter, as it sits there. So I just turned down that heat a little bit, and I'm just keeping an eye on it and watching it cook slowly, and you can kind of tell on the sides as it becomes less opaque. I'm just gonna clean this jar off, and then I'm gonna put it in the refrigerator and pull it out when I'm ready to use it. But if you're gonna be serving the salad right away, then you can just keep it out and then use it on your salad and then keep it in the refrigerator. I can see that it's starting to smoke, which means that it's getting a little too hot. So I'm just turning it down closer to a medium-low heat, and I just wanna keep an eye on it and make sure that it doesn't overcook. Meanwhile, or it doesn't burn on the outside, All right. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and prepare all the last pieces for this salad. So we're going to grab our greens, whatever greens you have. I love using Little Gems. I think it works perfectly with this salad dressing. It makes a beautiful green goddess dressing. So if you haven't already, go ahead and rinse it. And sometimes when I rinse it, I find that there's actually a little more dirt in there. So I'm just going to rinse it one more time. And then I want to make sure to dry it really well. So whether you have a salad spinner or you can just use towels, I just like to pat dry it just gently to make sure that it's not wet, because wet will deter the salad dressing from sticking to the lettuce leaves, and we don't want that. We just worked so hard on this dressing that we want it to stick to the leaves and coat them. So just making sure I pat it dry, and then I'm actually going to pull all these leaves off because they're so beautiful that I want to keep them as whole as I can. But if you want to, you can cut them. But sometimes this is how you put love into the meal. You do it with your hands. It works. It works so well. But if you get down to these little pieces and it's hard to get them off, then you can slice through it and then pull them apart. And for some of these really big pieces, they're a lot to serve, so I might tear a few of the big ones in half. But I love how these create a nice little cup, which will hold the salad really well, hold the dressing really well, all the veggies, all the parts, and it's a really fun presentation. All right, so there we go. I have my beautiful lettuce. I'm gonna put that in a serving bowl. Well, actually first, we're gonna put it in a mixing bowl because we're gonna mix it with the dressing and then serve it. And I'm just gonna make sure I have all of that water pulled off. There we go. Dab all of the water, make sure it's nice and dry, and throw these beautiful leaves. Look at these, they're so cute. I love them. They're just so pretty. All right, so good summer salad. It's just the best. And if you're cooking this in the winter and you can get some beautiful Little Gems, or if not, then some nice romaine, it's great with this dressing in this recipe. Other lettuces will work as well, all right, but this is just my favorite. And then we're going to grab our snap peas. And if you haven't already, go ahead and take the top piece off, all right? It's gonna be the part that was connected to the plant. And then sometimes it pulls off a little bit of a vein. So I'm just gonna do this a few times. I already did it with the rest of mine, but I'm just snapping it and pulling it off. So last one here, taking that top piece, all right? And then I'm snapping it and pulling it off. Voila, I have a bunch of deveined snap peas, and I'm just going to take them with my knife, okay, holding my knife, pointer finger and thumb on the blade, and my other fingers are on the handle, and I'm going to come at a really sharp angle because it's going to make these beautiful, and I'm going to slice through the snap peas, and these are going to be a really fun crunchy protein to add to the salad, and I'm throwing it in right with the lettuce. So I'm going to keep doing that. Meanwhile, I am going to take a look at my salmon, see how it's doing. And I'm starting to see that it's turning a lighter pink, a pastel pink in the bottom, but then it's opaque on the top. And it's been a few minutes, it's slowly cooking. I think it's time I can flip it. So I'm going to grab, let's see here, a spatula, and we're going to see if the salmon lets go. A lot of the time, the salmon will let you know if it's ready to be flipped. If it's cooked thick enough, then it won't stick to the pan. So this is a really important part where you go around and you test it. And as I feel it, I can see how thick it is on the top where it hasn't yet cooked. And I can judge if I want to flip it. All right, boom. There we go. So now I'm going to let it sit another 5 or so minutes, and then it should be ready to rock. And meanwhile, we're going to keep slicing our peas, slicing through at an angle, nice sharp angle. This is what we would do when we were catering so that we'd make it look fancy. And so you can do this and make your salad look fancy, all right, on a nice sharp angle. We call it on a bias in the kitchen, all right? And I'm making these a little bit, they're bite-sized pieces, okay? So they're not very thick. They're about half the width of my finger, all right? But they are going to give us a little crunch, so they're not super duper thin. All right, just coming at it. Sometimes some of them roll away. You just have to go with it. All right, there we go. Coming through. Sometimes if you just do one at a time, you're actually faster because then you can really concentrate and work your magic. There we go. And I'll just continue right like that. All right. So I just used a handful of snap peas, and it's going to be a beautiful addition to my meal. In this salad, I also want to add a little bit of fresh herbs. So I'm going to chop up some of the dill and the parsley. All right, just a little bit, but it's going to add a whole nother layer of consistency that's really fun. So you get some fresh herbs, and then you also get the dressing. Okay, so there we go. Have a little bit of parsley, a little bit of dill. I'm going to use about half of it in my salad, and then I can also use some on top as a garnish just to make it that much prettier. All right, and then we'll just take a look at this salmon. It's cooking really nicely. I can tell that it isn't quite cooked through because it's still pretty jiggly. All right, so we're gonna give it another minute. If you are not sure, cut through the middle and check it out. So I'm just gonna take a little gander, slicing right through the thickest part, and as I look in, there's still a good chunk that's very opaque. So I'm gonna give it a little bit more time just to continue cooking. It's almost ready. Meanwhile, the last thing you can do if you want to is you can add a little bit of, or a few more of those pumpkin seeds just to this pan next to the salmon. So I'm going to do that because it'll toast them, and then I can use them on top of my salad as an extra crunch, an extra protein, and a whole extra layer. So I'm just going to spread these out here. And as I pull my salmon off, I'll also pull those seeds off that are lightly toasted, and those will be pretty. Finally, the last part is our feta, as well as your avocado. Okay, if you have a great ripe avocado, you can throw it on top. So I'm just going to pull my feta out and get it ready, and I'm going to crumble some of it right into this salad. But I'm going to save a little bit for a garnish on top. So if you have some mixed into the salad and then some put on top, it's just that much more fun to eat. So there we go. I've got my feta. I'm going to rinse my fingers. And we have our avocado. Now mine is not very ripe, so we'll see how it does. All right, it's not super soft. If it's ripe, it'll be much better of an experience. Here we go. It's not quite letting go. Okay, that'll work. So I'm just going to slice through. You know, this one's a little funky of an avocado. I think I'm going to be skipping my avocado, but I do encourage you to slice some avocado and put it on top because it's a creamy fat that's delicious, and it adds a whole nother level of just a great salad. Okay, so you can add that on. And then we also have those radishes. So they're smelling nice and pickled now. They're nice and pink. Feel free to taste it. And I'm just going to pull some of these out. All right. They're a little stinky smelling, but they're really flavorful and they're really good for you. I think you'll be surprised at how much more you like the taste of them than the smell. All right. So don't let that alarm you. All right. And my salmon, I can smell it. I think it's pretty good to go. It feels on the firmer side now. So I can stir these pumpkin seeds a little bit. I can turn my heat off. And I'm going to let the salmon rest for a minute off the heat. So I just pulled it off to the side. It can start to come to life, soak up any last juices that are in the pan. What happens when it cooks is it lets juices out, and then when it's cold, it starts to soak them back in. So we're going to let it sit for a minute, and I'm going to toss this salad with all the goodies that we just added in and the dressing. I'm just going to pour some of this in here. I definitely have extra dressing, which is exactly what I wanted. So there we go. You can use it again as a marinade and a dressing over the next week. And we can toss it up. My favorite way actually to toss a salad is with my hands, my bare hands, especially when you're serving a crowd. So if you were serving a bigger size of this salad, you would just get in there and toss it with your hands. It's the best way to make sure you really evenly coat all the lettuce and get that dressing in there. All right, it's so beautiful. And I'm very excited. I hope you are too. All right, we're gonna plate this. So here we go. And I'm gonna make sure I like to plate it with my hands when I wanna make it look pretty. So I'm just gonna take some of these lettuce leaves, pile them on top of each other, let them kind of fold over each other, get some of those really cute ones in there. All right. But of course, you don't have to do it with your hands. You can just take a big blob, put it in, and then I see a lot of goodies in here. So I'm just gonna put them on top. All right. So we have the radish, we have those snap peas, we have the feta. It's gorgeous. We're gonna put a little more feta on top so that you get some fresh feta. It's gonna make a nice white pop. We can put a few more bright pink radishes on top, make it look extra special. There we go, tuck some of those in there. And put some herbs. So I have the rest of the dill and the parsley that I can sprinkle around the plate. I'm just gonna call that good. And then we're going to add the pumpkin seeds and the salmon, and there we go. So pulling this salmon off. All right. I'm gonna slide it carefully. And I'm gonna turn it over because I like the other side a little better, the bottom side. And then I'm gonna add some of these pumpkin seeds on top. And stunning. We have quite the high protein salad, and I am so pumped to dive in. I can't even wait. But before I do, I'm just going to show you this beautiful creation. All right, so we have such a nice salad. Hopefully you can really see there how we have all the colors, all the goodies, and the flavors are insane. I'm gonna come a little closer so you can get a really good view. All right. And there you are, a stunning green goddess salad with a pumpkin seed dressing and tons of flavor, tons of probiotics, tons of herbs. And of course, if you're adding that avocado on top, you can lie that on top of that and you'll have a bright green finish. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Please enjoy and let me know how it went. Feel free to reach out on our website, anjalee.co, ANJALEE.co, or post a photo or a video on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and tag me at anjalee.co. I can't wait to see. That's the best part of my job, is seeing your success. So please let me know, and enjoy your salad, and I'll see you in the next class.